Your Honor, my client demands $8,000 monthly child support for the 3 children he abandoned. My wife Jessica's attorney slammed documents on the table while she dabbed fake tears with a tissue. What they didn't know was that I had DNA results in my briefcase proving none of those children were biologically mine, and I'd known for 6 months. Should I have told her before destroying her in open court? I'm Nathan Cooper, 38 years old, and until 8 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family in Austin, Texas. I was wrong about everything. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Jessica and I met 12 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. She was beautiful, vivacious, and had this infectious laugh that made everyone around her smile. I was a software engineer at a growing tech startup. She was working as a marketing coordinator. We clicked immediately. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. The wedding was everything she wanted, a lavish affair at a hill country vineyard that cost me $60,000, but seeing her happy made it worth it. Our first child, supposedly my son Ethan, was born 11 months after the wedding. Then came the twins, Olivia and Mason, 3 years later. Life was chaotic but full, or so I thought. I worked long hours building my career. After 7 years at the startup, I'd climbed to senior engineering director, pulling in $185,000 annually. Jessica had stopped working after Ethan was born, saying she wanted to be a full-time mom. I supported that decision completely. I wanted our kids to have a parent at home, and financially we were comfortable. I paid the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house in Westlake, covered all the bills, gave Jessica a generous monthly allowance, and never questioned how she spent her time. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was trusting her completely when she insisted I travel for work conferences and client meetings. "Go ahead, honey," she'd say sweetly. "The kids and I will be fine. You work so hard, you deserve the career advancement." I traveled at least twice a month, sometimes for a week at a time. I thought I was being a good provider, building a future for my family. I never suspected that every time I left town, she had another man in my bed. The truth came out in the most mundane way possible. 8 months ago, 6-year-old Ethan got sick at school. The nurse called Jessica repeatedly, but she didn't answer. So they called me, the emergency backup contact. I left work immediately and picked him up. He had a high fever, so I took him to urgent care. The doctor wanted to run some tests, including a blood panel. "Mr. Cooper, what's your blood type?" the doctor asked while reviewing Ethan's chart. "O positive," I replied. "And your wife?" "A positive, I think." "Why?" The doctor's expression shifted slightly. "Ethan is AB positive. That's unusual given your blood types." I'm not a doctor, but I remembered enough from high school biology to know that 2 parents with O and a blood types can't produce an AB child. It's genetically impossible. "There must be a mistake with the records," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Possibly," the doctor said carefully. "We can retest if you'd like." I sat in that sterile exam room, holding my feverish son, while my entire world shifted on its axis. Ethan looked up at me with big brown eyes nothing like my blue ones or Jessica's green ones, and asked, "Daddy, am I going to be okay?" "Yeah, buddy," I managed. "You're going to be fine." But I wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. I took Ethan home and put him to bed. Jessica finally called back 3 hours later. "Sorry, I was at yoga and left my phone in the car. Is Ethan okay?" "Yoga." She'd been at yoga while our son was sick at school. "He's fine. Resting now," I said flatly. "Great. I'm grabbing dinner with some girlfriends." "Don't wait up." She came home at midnight, smelling like wine and cologne that definitely wasn't mine. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I did something calculated. I waited until Jessica took all 3 kids to her mother's house for the weekend, something she did monthly, and I collected DNA samples. Hair from Ethan's brush. Saliva from the twins' toothbrushes. My own cheek swab. I overnight everything to a private lab that promised discretion and fast results. Then I waited in agony for 5 days. When the results came via encrypted email, I was alone in my home office. My hands shook as I opened the PDF. Child 1, Ethan Cooper probability of paternity, 0.00%. Child 2, Olivia Cooper probability of paternity, 0.00%. Child 3, Mason Cooper probability of paternity, 0.00%. I read it 3 times. Then I read the detailed explanation. The children I'd raised, loved, and worked myself to exhaustion for weren't biologically mine. None of them. I sat there in the dark, and something inside me broke and reformed into something harder. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I went cold. Over the next week, I hired a private investigator. What he uncovered was devastating. Jessica had been having an affair with her personal trainer, Kyle, for 9 years. The investigator had photos of them together, at hotels, at his apartment, in my house. Kyle was likely the father of all 3 children based on the timeline. But it got worse. There was a second man, Jessica's former boss, Derek, who she'd been seeing for the past 2 years. The investigator found text messages. Jessica had been careless with her cloud backup, where she and Derek laughed about me being a clueless ATM machine. One message from Jessica to Derek read, "Nathan's traveling again next week. We'll have the whole house to ourselves. He's so stupid. He actually believes I go to yoga 5 times a week, face with tears of joy." I saved everything. Every photo, every text, every receipt. I created a comprehensive folder documenting 9 years of infidelity. Then I called the best divorce attorney in Austin. Margaret Chin was a shark in a suit, exactly what I needed. I sat in her office and laid out everything. She reviewed the DNA results, the investigator's report, and the text messages. Then she looked at me with something like respect. "Nathan, I'm going to be blunt. Your wife committed paternity fraud. In Texas, you can challenge child support obligations when paternity is disproven. She's going to fight hard because she stands to lose everything." "I want full custody of none of them," I said, and my voice cracked slightly. "I know that sounds cruel, but they're not my children biologically, and she's clearly been using them as leverage for my money." "Actually," Margaret said carefully, "you may have established legal paternity by acting as their father all these years. Texas courts can be complicated about this." "Then I want to minimize my obligations." "She committed fraud for nearly a decade." Margaret nodded. "We'll need to move carefully. Jessica will likely demand massive child support, probably $8,000 to $10,000 monthly given your income. But with this evidence, we can fight it." I filed for divorce the next day. Jessica's reaction was theatrical. She called me sobbing. "Nathan, what are you doing? We can work this out. Think of the children." "The children that aren't mine?" I said coldly. Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "I know, Jessica. I know everything. About Kyle. About Derek. About the fact that I'm not the biological father of any of your children." More silence. Then her voice changed, became harder, calculating. "You can't prove that." "Actually, I can. And I will." She hung up. 3 days later, I was served with counter-divorce papers. Jessica wasn't just fighting the divorce, she was going for blood. Her attorney demanded I continue paying the mortgage, give her $5,000 monthly spousal support, and pay $8,000 monthly in child support. The audacity was stunning. For 6 months, we battled through depositions, motions, and discovery. Jessica played the victim perfectly. The devoted mother abandoned by her cruel husband who suddenly decided he didn't want his family. Her attorney was aggressive, painting me as a deadbeat dad trying to escape responsibility. What they didn't know was that I'd been holding back my nuclear evidence, waiting for trial. Margaret's strategy was to let Jessica commit fully to her lies before exposing them. Which brings us to yesterday, the final divorce hearing. The courtroom was formal and intimidating. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Jessica sat with her attorney, Marcus Webb, looking appropriately devastated in a conservative dress. She'd lost weight, probably to appear more sympathetic. Her mother sat in the gallery, glaring at me with pure hatred. I sat with Margaret, wearing my best suit, looking calm and professional. Judge Morrison reviewed the case summary. "This is a dissolution of marriage with contested child custody and support. Mrs. Cooper is seeking primary custody of 3 minor children and substantial financial support. Mr. Cooper contests these demands. Mrs. Cooper, your attorney may proceed." Marcus Webb stood, all righteous indignation. "Your Honor, my client has been a devoted mother for nearly 10 years while Mr. Cooper focused solely on his career. He traveled constantly, left childcare entirely to her, and now wants to abandon his responsibilities." He put Jessica on the stand. She testified tearfully about being a single mother in everything but name, about my emotional absence, about the children asking why Daddy didn't love them anymore. It was a masterful performance. Then came the financial demands. "Your Honor," Marcus announced, "Mr. Cooper earns $185,000 annually. Based on Texas child support guidelines for 3 children, we're demanding $8,000 monthly in child support, plus $5,000 monthly spousal support, plus he should maintain the mortgage and insurance on the family home. He slid documents across to the judge. Mrs. Cooper has sacrificed her career to raise these children. She has no significant income. Mr. Cooper can easily afford these obligations. Jessica looked at me with something like triumph in her eyes. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents. Mr. Cooper, how do you respond to these demands? Margaret stood. Your Honor, my client contests every aspect of Mrs. Cooper's financial demands based on evidence we'll be presenting. What evidence? Evidence of fraud, Your Honor. Specifically, paternity fraud spanning nearly 10 years. The courtroom went silent. Jessica's face paled. Marcus jumped up. Objection. This is a baseless accusation designed to. Do you have documentation, Miss Chin? Judge Morrison interrupted. We do, Your Honor. Margaret pulled out a thick folder and approached the bench. I'm submitting DNA test results from a certified laboratory showing that Mr. Cooper is not the biological father of any of the 3 children in question. She handed copies to the judge and to Marcus. I watched Jessica's attorney read the documents. His confident expression crumbled. Judge Morrison studied the results carefully. These tests were conducted when? 6 months ago, Your Honor, Margaret replied. Mr. Cooper became suspicious when medical records showed blood type incompatibilities. The DNA results confirm he is not the biological father of Ethan, Olivia, or Mason Cooper. This is ridiculous. Jessica burst out. He's lying. He's manipulating evidence. Mrs. Cooper, please control yourself, Judge Morrison said sharply. She looked at Marcus. Does your client dispute these results? Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear. Your Honor, we'd need time to review. We also have additional evidence, Margaret continued, now moving in for the kill. Text messages between Mrs. Cooper and 2 separate men, Kyle Harrison and Derek Foster, discussing the affair and mocking Mr. Cooper for unknowingly supporting children that weren't his. She submitted printouts of the messages. I watched Jessica's face drain of all color as the judge read them. One message was particularly damning. Nathan deposited this month's allowance. Easy money for raising someone else's kids face with tears of joy. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. She'd clearly seen a lot in her career, but this was egregious even by those standards. Mrs. Cooper, the judge said coldly, did you knowingly allow Mr. Cooper to believe he was the father of these children while knowing he was not? Jessica opened and closed her mouth like a fish. I didn't know for sure. You didn't know for sure? Judge Morrison's voice could have cut glass. These messages suggest otherwise. You specifically reference someone else's kids and mock Mr. Cooper for supporting them. Marcus tried to salvage it. Your Honor, regardless of paternity, Mr. Cooper has acted as the legal father for years. Under Texas law, he may have established paternity through his actions. I'm aware of the law, Counselor, Judge Morrison interrupted. But I'm also aware that paternity fraud is grounds for challenging support obligations, particularly when the fraud was knowing and malicious. She turned back to Jessica. Mrs. Cooper, who is the biological father of these children? Jessica started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones from earlier. I don't know, she whispered. You don't know? Not one of them. Kyle might be, or Derek. I'm not sure. The gallery erupted in whispers. Even Jessica's mother looked shocked. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. Order. Mrs. Cooper, you committed fraud against Mr. Cooper for nearly a decade, allowing him to support children under false pretenses. That is unconscionable. She looked at the DNA results again. Mr. Cooper, despite these results, you did act as the father to these children for their entire lives. Under Texas Family Code, you may have established legal paternity regardless of biology. My heart sank. Was I still going to be trapped? Judge Morrison continued. However, given the egregious nature of Mrs. Cooper's fraud and her own admission that she's uncertain of the biological father's identity, I'm ruling as follows. She adjusted her glasses. The divorce is granted. Mr. Cooper will pay $2,000 monthly in child support until paternity can be legally established with the biological father, at which point Mr. Cooper's obligation terminates completely. Jessica gasped. $2,000? But you need to find the biological father of your children. Judge Morrison cut her off. Mr. Cooper will pay reduced support for 6 months while you establish paternity. If you cannot or will not identify the biological father within that time frame, Mr. Cooper's obligations will be terminated. As for spousal support denied, Mrs. Cooper, you committed fraud. You're not entitled to ongoing financial support from the man you deceived. Regarding the house, Mr. Cooper purchased the home before the marriage. It remains his property. Mrs. Cooper has 60 days to vacate. Marcus tried one last objection. Your Honor, Mrs. Cooper has no income, no home. Then I suggest she contact Kyle Harrison or Derek Foster for assistance. This court does not reward fraud. My ruling stands. Judge Morrison slammed the gavel. We're adjourned. Jessica sat frozen in shock. Her attorney looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Her mother was crying in the gallery. I stood up, shook Margaret's hand, and walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in months. Outside, Margaret smiled. That went better than expected. Judge Morrison doesn't tolerate paternity fraud. You'll pay minimal support for 6 months, and once Jessica identifies the real father, or fails to, you're free. What about the kids? I asked. Despite everything, I'd spent years raising them. That's your decision, Nathan. You can maintain a relationship if you want, but you're not legally obligated. I thought about Ethan, Olivia, and Mason. I'd read them bedtime stories, taught them to ride bikes, attended every school play. None of it had been real, at least not in the way I thought. I need time to think about that, I said. 3 months have passed since the hearing. Jessica found a small apartment and is working at a retail job, the first employment she's had in a decade. Her mother helps with childcare. She finally admitted that Kyle Harrison is likely the father of all 3 kids. He's fighting the paternity test requirement, but the court will force it eventually. As for me, I moved to a new house in a different neighborhood, a fresh start. I switched jobs to a company that requires minimal travel. I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. The kids have asked to see me. Ethan called last week. Dad, can we come visit? Mom says you don't want us anymore, but I miss you. That broke my heart. Whatever Jessica did, those kids didn't deserve to lose the only father figure they've known. So I'm working through it in therapy, trying to figure out what role, if any, I want to play in their lives going forward. Last week, I ran into Jessica at a grocery store. She looked exhausted, worn down by reality. Nathan, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I was wrong. About everything. Yes, you were. The kids miss you. They don't understand why you left. Because their mother lied to me for a decade, I said. They'll understand someday. She nodded and walked away. My phone buzzed later that evening. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Cooper, this is Kyle Harrison. We need to talk about financial arrangements for the children. I smiled and deleted it. Not my problem anymore. My name is Nathan Cooper. I'm 38 years old. I spent 10 years raising children that weren't mine while my wife laughed at me behind my back. But I'm not that man anymore. I'm the man who walked into court, presented the truth, and walked out free. And I've never looked back.